scary teleportation event to alien desert cityscape. This event happened to a fellow worker in same building at the time over 30 years ago. We were multiple people working in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and were on friendly terms as we all worked in same office tower but on different floors. We usually ate together on a second floor cafeteria quite a lot. One day around 1990, one person of our group came to our usual cafeteria table looking all confused and a little dazed too. He was in his usual business slacks and shirt and tee, which was normal for the Calgary oil and gas offices which we were working in at the time, but they looked quite dirty as if he had been in a windstorm where dirt and dust got on his shirt and pants. He was clearly out of it and was having problems replying to our questions about his dirty appearance as he sat down. Normally, he orders and gets his food first and then sits down, but today that was not the case. It took him a few seconds, but he was out of it enough that one of us offered him a soft drink and he drank it all in mere seconds, which shocked me and the others a bit. We pretty much interrupted ourselves all at the same time and asked him what was going on, and he said he just came back out of the elevator after a weird trip to somewhere else. He began telling that he had just entered one of the main elevators from a higher floor, and for some reason it would not stop on the second floor and went straight down to the bottommost parking lot, which was P4 in our building. He was the only person in the elevator and he thought maybe he didn't press the proper second floor button correctly. The elevator stopped and the door opened, and then he experienced a sudden flash of complete darkness. A massive wave of burning to the skin heat, and then a sudden flash of the brightest light that he said felt like a nuclear flash, which blinded him so much he saw stars in his eyes. He opened his eyes, which took a few tens of seconds to clear up, and found himself outside in a very hot desert-like environment with dust and dirt blowing about him, and when he looked down and then up he could see he was standing on a large concrete-like pad situated maybe 3 to 5 kilometers outside of a massive city in the middle of giant desert dunes with actual futuristic curved spires and tower blocks so tall he could not see the tops of them. He saw strange human-like but not human beings looking strangely at him and walking so close by him that he could have touched them. He heard no sound but rather a strange hum all around him. He saw what he thinks was a Greyhound bus-like vehicle in front of him but much larger, and that those beings were stepping aboard, and in less than 20 seconds he could see multiple doors close, and it lifted off so quickly with so much dust swirling around that he had to close his eyes again. When he opened them up, the bus was flying towards the city and was already almost out of his sight, which made him think that that city must be huge in size. He said the bus was probably the size of a large suburban house. He said he looked for at least a full minute at what was around him and that it was not Earth-like but super hot and dusty, like Arizona hot and dusty, with big sand dunes nearby larger than any Calgary office tower. He said it looked like the spires and towers you saw on the movie Metropolis, but for real. He said he saw actual sky-high concrete-like highways and pathways, and he also saw flying massively sized vehicles of all shapes and configurations in between the spires and blocky towers, but heard no sound other than this big heavy hum. He said all the colors around him seemed muted like a blue-gray. Even his own hands and arms looked blue-gray. He thinks the flying vehicles kind of looked like semi-trucks. Buses, box trucks and cylinders, but incredibly large because he could still see their shape fairly clearly even from the 3 to 5 kilometers distance he thinks he was away from. He turned around after being stunned for a minute and saw nothing but desert dunes behind him and a large concrete block-like structure about the size of a modern house with a wide and tall open doorway maybe 10 meters away from him. The humming got louder and louder, and it seemed like he was being pulled back into the doorway and he could not resist. He felt himself leaning towards the city again, but his legs were stiff and he seemed to be sliding or slipping backwards, and he just could not stop the movement. He was able to keep looking at the immense city that he said made Calgary look tiny. He thinks just based upon the vastness in his field of view that it may have been 100 times larger than the downtown Calgary office block area, which is about 5 square km when you look at a map. He could not describe the exact details of the city, but he said it was really similar to what was depicted in the movie Metropolis, but from a bottom-up and from the side viewpoint. He said he felt really small compared to the city and those towers. Blocks and highways were gigantic in size. He said all the buildings made the Petro-Canada Tower look like a small dollhouse compared to them. He also said the human-like people staring at him looked a bit fuzzy and not quite fully there, but a bit ghostly see-through-like. He could have touched them, they were so close. He said he felt shocked at their appearance but could not remember the type or style of clothing they wore. He just knew they were wearing clothes of some type. He feels they were all males and thinks they were all taller and much more wider and muscular than him. He said he did not think he saw any females at all nearby. He then felt himself sliding backwards like he was on ice, and he could not resist the slipping and sliding, which he said felt like when you are on a tilted sidewalk ice with very unstable footing. He was sliding back almost 10 meters towards the doorway, and then again he felt a wave of heat and flash of super bright light. Sudden darkness, and then he found himself in our office tower elevator again. Stunned and a bit foggy in mind, he noticed dirt and dust all over himself, and he could not think of pressing the elevator button again for a minute or two. The elevator began moving again upwards by itself and actually stopped at the second floor again with no stops in between. There should have been huge lunchtime crowds at this time of day, but there was no one else in the elevator but him. He said he got out of the elevator but was so foggy that he could not remember where on the floor he was and had to sit down on a nearby bench until he could see properly again and clear up his eyes. He said it took almost 5 minutes until he could think clearly, but his body just would not accept his inputs. Everything felt sluggish and almost drunk-like. He cleared up enough to get up and find the cafeteria and saw us so he could sit down and start tell of this story after we inquired about his dirty appearance. He told us the above details pretty straightforward, but we could see afterwards that he was really freaked out, and he asked his same company co-worker to tell an office secretary to say he was suddenly sick and had to go see a doctor. He did get up, and his chair did have a lot of dust on it when he left. Yeah, I know. We should have saved some of it to get forensically examined later, but nobody thought of that at the time. He actually did go to the doctor afterwards, but they found nothing physically wrong with him, and they told him to go home and get some rest. He did not come back for over a week, and the next time we saw him, we could see that mentally he was all changed. He became much less talkative and more cowering, scared, not really joining in our conversations. He just said hi, ate his food, and said bye. He just did not have any more joy in his face or in his manner. He looked a bit depressed and felt scared and bewildered the next few months. It took a few months, but he kept joining our lunches less and less until he just didn't show up one day. The co-worker who usually worked with him said he had quit his job and said he was moving to another city in eastern Canada near where he grew up. I stayed for another year after that until I eventually moved on, going back to college, and kept asking him questions when he did show up about what he saw and felt, but he just clammed up and would not say anything more other than the city was just massive, being so much taller and bigger than Calgary. Over the years I have kept trying to find him and see what he's up to, but I can't seem to find him on social media or anywhere else. About 10 years ago, on a visit back to Calgary, I did run into one of our office workers still working at the same company, but who is now in middle management, and asked him about our friend. I was told that the guy had gotten recently married and had a kid, but was not otherwise on social media or online. He is no longer in oil and gas, but works back east as a floor manager in a big city grocery store setting. Something happened to the guy, and this story is not the first one I have encountered with people I know and interact with in real life or online. I see and hear these stories of teleportation type scenarios at least once or twice a year from various places around the world. I would say I have heard at least 100 such stories just in my field of acquaintances, friends alone. Of those stories, at least 1/3 deal with seeing massive cities in various environments, such as in vast open deserts, on ocean shores, on massive mountainsides, on open water, floating in space near local planets, others seemingly being underground, and other completely covering an entire planet. These descriptions of massive cities many times larger than ours on Earth keep reminding me that maybe the city planets of the Star Wars universe or Asgard of the Thor, Avengers movies maybe be more real than we could possibly imagine. I have always personally believed that aliens are everywhere in this galaxy, and many others too. I also believe that our friend was accidentally transported to this faraway alien city, probably because of a probable computer glitch on the other side's transporter system. It is just so similar to a Stargate that when I first saw the movie in the 1990s, it took me immediately back to the scene at the cafeteria and felt that is what happened. The wormhole was probably misconnected and took my friend from an office tower elevator in Calgary to somewhere else far away in a blink of an eye, but sent him back to Earth when their computer system figured out it wasn't supposed to transport him from Earth. My friend just was not able to process what happened and basically has PTSD, in my opinion. I am very much thinking it still affects him 30+ years later. I suspect due to his normal big city suburban Eastern Canada upbringing that his worldview was just shattered by what he experienced and just cannot accept what he saw. It's sad, but an understandable reaction to unfathomable life events. And me personally has seen enough evidence and stories to know that FTL transport many magnitudes faster than light is a very real thing, and that massive cityscapes are also a very real thing, including planet-sized cities and even Dyson spheres and ring worlds. Aliens and alien civilizations exist, and we just have to accept that now.